we go. And now we'll also have our transcript starting. Great. So welcome everyone. As I said, my name is Sarah Spicer. This is our TDM, or Transportation Demand Management Strategic Planning Information session. As I mentioned, the Transportation Options Group is the team that leads these programs, and we sit within the Transit and Mobility Division at SDOT. So we just wanted to quickly introduce the team so you know who's working on this work, and then we'll dive into our agenda. So let me hand it over to our other members of the Transportation Options Group. First, I'll hand it to Matt.
Hey everyone, I'm TDM lead here at SDOT. My name is Matthew Trika, and I'm going to kick it over to Ellie.
Hey everyone, my name's Ellie Smith, she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior transportation planner in the Transportation Options Group.
Thanks, team. And we also have folks from Steer Group working on this project with us. I'll kick it over to them as they're co-hosting this session with us today.
And I can start. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jenny Hong, and I am with Steer, and I am the project manager on the consultant side. Now we'll throw over to Jeff.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff England. I'm what we call a project director, working with Jenny to oversee the work we're doing with City of Seattle, SDOT. Paroma?
Yep. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Paroma Koshroy. I am the deputy program manager for this project. Nice to meet you all.
Great, thanks all. And since we have such a large group here today, which is so wonderful to see, we would like to ask that you introduce yourselves in the chat. We're going to be using the chat a bit today for those introductions. We'd also encourage you as we go throughout the presentation that you use the chat for any questions or comments. We'll read them out and we will address them at that time. You can also raise your hand if you want to do so verbally. Let's see, I guess I just wanted to mention that, you know, this is the first time we're doing a session like this. We're really excited to see so many folks joining. We previously have done, you know, a lot of internal work, and strategy. We're a very small group. We work within, again, as I mentioned, the Transit and Mobility Group at SDOT, and a lot of our programs haven't had a large engagement process as part of them. And so as part of the strategic plan that we'll get into in much greater detail as we go through the presentation, we wanted to engage with our partners and use this as a time to check in with current and prospective stakeholders. So we've invited today a lot of those partner organizations we work with frequently, some internal city departments, other agencies, organizations, as well as key members of community benefit organizations that we've worked with at the city through the Seattle Transportation Plan or other venues. So welcome. And with that, I will hand it over to Jenny, who's going to go through our agenda today.
Thank you, Sarah. Paroma, if you can go to the next slide. Well, as Sarah mentioned, we're going to be kicking off our agenda today. So as Sarah mentioned, we're going to be starting the SDOT's Transportation Demand Management Program's 5-year strategic plan. We actually started a few months ago, but we are kicking off our stakeholder engagement effort now. And so wanted to provide our stakeholders information about the project, why we're doing it, what we're doing, as well as giving opportunities for folks to be involved. We want to hear from you. So this will be the first of many opportunities for all of you to be involved and give us your input. So for today's session, we'll be talking about, what is TDM to help set the stage and the definitions of, what we're operating within, then putting in some context of what TDM is like in Seattle right now, what the travel patterns have been in the last few years. And then we'll go into the project overview, talk about what the goals of it are, the timeline and the milestones. And then we've left lots of time at the end for Q&A, so folks can ask us questions about the project, about what we're doing, priorities, and everything like that. We are actually going to start off with a poll. And so we have a couple of polls sprinkled throughout the session. And so I'm going to paste in the chat the link. So if folks are able to click that and answer our first question, that would be great. And then Proma is also going to. So the first one is a quick poll on what is your level of familiarity with transportation and management on a scale of 1 to 5. I'll give folks some time to respond. So 1 is I've never heard of TDM, 2 is I'm new to TDM, 3 I'm familiar with TDM, but it's not part of my day-to-day activities, 4 I've worked in TDM for some time now, and 5 is TDM is part of my job description and I do it all the time. All right, I think we got in all the responses. Great, so it seems like most folks are in the 2 realms. So you're new to TDM, but there's interest and there's, some type of relation with your work. So that's great to hear. That's perfect because we have a couple of slides on introducing TDM and why we're doing it. That's awesome. Thank you. Roma's going to switch back. Okay, so what is TDM? I think there are lots of definitions, but really, generally speaking, it's aiming to manage limited resources, whether they're road space, public right-of-way, in an efficient and sustainable manner. So the GIF on the right really succinctly summarizes what it is, right? So if everybody were to be driving, it takes up lots of space, but it's not very efficient because one person is taking up the entire space of a car. So if we can get more people biking, taking transit, riding a light rail, we're going to be much more efficient in terms of how we travel, how we use the space, and also just if we're able to enjoy and interact with one another as we are sharing the space. So what does TDM look like? Next slide, please, Roma. So there are lots of different examples of what TDM can look like. Some can apply to certain sites better than the others, but we've provided several buckets to help you organize these strategies and think about how they could be applied. So the first bucket is site-based infrastructure. So these are physical improvements that could be implemented on a site to either provide more information to folks, such as wayfinding and real-time displays, or help folks complete their sustainable trips, such as the end-of-trip facilities, showers and bike lockers, so that folks who are biking in can, refresh themselves before they start work. It also includes, on-site affordable housing, because if you're able to work where you live in an affordable manner, then you don't have to commute to work. The next bucket involves services or programs that help folks get to and from the site. So that can range from rideshare, carpool, van pools, as well as services that help folks travel once they're on site, such as on-site bike share or car share, so that even once they arrive there, they don't have to drive anywhere else. The third bucket are policies and plans that are more formalized to help manage or regulate the vehicles that do come onto site. So that includes from dynamic parking pricing, so charging the true cost of parking on site, all the way to complete streets policies and restricted vehicle access zones. So controlling or managing how the roads are used within the site. The last bucket includes promotions and incentives to help reward and encourage sustainable travel. So that could be subsidies, rewards and recognition programs to recognize folks who are taking sustainable modes, as well as events and promotions to encourage and to raise awareness around these types of services and amenities that are available to folks. The next slide, please. And on to the benefits. So why are we doing this? Why do we want to encourage folks to not drive and take alternative modes of transportation? So with fewer cars on the road, we can reduce emissions, which helps improve air quality, but it also reduces congestion on the roads. With more people biking and walking on the streets, you know, they're traveling healthier, they're happier because they're not stuck in traffic and stressed out. And for businesses, that means that they're able to use these TDM amenities and services as a way to attract and retain talent, because they are often benefits to help folks get to work a little easier. This helps to activate streets and local businesses with more people on the road, you know, walking and biking. You know, they're more likely to stop at a local coffee shop or a local business and you know, engage with the community rather than just driving from point A to point B. There's also parking benefits as folks are you know, either not driving in, so there's less need for parking, but also more shared uses if different businesses can share the same parking spaces. So just better utilization of parking spaces. And lastly, we know that transportation connects people to jobs and opportunities. So we want to make sure that everybody has access to affordable transportation options, which would start to help reduce the transportation equity inequities that are you know, historically present, and that SDOT is working to with the city to, you know, start to right. And then I will, next page, please. All right, then I'll hand it back to Sarah.
Great, thank you, Jenny. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to give a little overview. Oh, first we have a poll.
So now that you are familiar with the Menti poll process, we're going to switch it up. In 3 words or less, how would you describe your ideal vision for transportation in Seattle in 2030? And we'll give you a minute to come up with those keywords.
And this is open-ended, so it'll make a word cloud, correct, Jenny? Oh, here it comes. Great.
Ooh, efficient. Safe. This is fun, seeing this in real time.
This is great. I don't think I've seen a word yet that I don't like, so I really like this word cloud.
Oh, I like it. Kid-oriented. Yeah. That's something that we don't normally do about, but that's very true.
We'd be happy to share this out as a graphic after the presentation.
Yeah. Okay, I think there are some trends: efficient, safe, easy, clean, equitable, affordable. Yep, we agree with all of those, and we hope to incorporate all of these words and you know, the intent behind them into our plan. Does anybody want to speak to anything? Like, what did they write? And maybe let me see if there's something that we. Nimble. Yeah. Okay, great. All right, do we want to switch back? And now I'll hand it to Sarah.
All right, thank you. So thank you for the words and the thoughts. It's great to see that word cloud take shape. I'll provide a little overview of TDM in Seattle. First, I'm going to kick off with our vision and mission. We start all of our presentations with this to ground ourselves. To ground this conversation, Seattle is a thriving, equitable community powered by dependable transportation. And we at SDOT are on a mission to deliver a transportation system that provides safe and affordable access to places and opportunities. And so we're here today talking about a plan to look at our TDM programs and ensure that they grow and exemplify this statement. Next slide, please. So first, a quick recap on our core programs that the Transportation Options Group runs at SDOT as they currently stand. And so we likely have stakeholders today who are touched through these various programs, maybe more than one of them even. So the Commute Trip Reduction Program is a statewide program. We are the local implementer of that program, and that affects all employers over 100 employees commuting during peak times. So that's where we work with our big business community, and we work with partners at Commute Seattle, as well as collaborating with the state on that program. And this is just a really quick overview. So if anyone has questions on a specific program, please jump in. The next one is transportation management programs, what we call TMPs. That's where we work with building sites, and we work directly with who we call building transportation coordinators to ensure that those sites are meeting their development requirements that were put in place during development review in an effort to mitigate the impacts of that development. And related to that, we work with major institutions citywide. These are our meds and eds, our major medical institutions, as well as educational institutions throughout the city. They also have TMPs, but given their size, have some special relationships and requirements that we work with them on, as well as partnering with Department of Neighborhoods on that program. Fourth, our commuter benefit ordinance is a relatively new ordinance in the city. This was passed back in 2019, so in the era before the pandemic. This is an ordinance that requires any employer with more than 20 employees worldwide in Seattle, so employees worldwide, employers in Seattle, to allow their employees to use pre-tax dollars on transit benefits. That can include transit or van pool, which is also technically considered transit. So that's something that was put in place a number of years ago to provide an opportunity for more workers of employers of different sizes to access transit benefits. The next, My Trips, I'll mention. We have our own city employee program that really aims to support all our city employees getting around via sustainable modes. We're one of the biggest employers in the city, so we want to lead by example and do our part to ensure that we are leading the way when it comes to using those sustainable options. And finally, we've been implementing neighborhood TDM programs primarily on a grant-based basis, on a project-by-project basis. These have been branded Flip Your Trip in recent years. We've just been wrapping up one that's focused on downtown, a smaller program over the course of the summer, spring and summer. Prior to that, you may have learned about this type of program via our work getting people around during the West Seattle bridge closure. We had about a year-long program that provided information, incentives, and a lot of communications and info to help people get around during the course of that project. So it's I'll just mention also that there are other activities at SDOT that would broadly fall under the definitions of TDM that Jenny mentioned earlier. Notably, our work to support and promote ORCA programs, programs like ORCA Lift, ORCA Opportunity. Those are all major efforts at SDOT to get more people access to and more people using transit. Those programs are owned by an adjacent group in our division. We work closely with them, and the work on this plan will illustrate those relationships and partnerships where we're working in similar spaces. It's also worth noting again that these programs really rely on those partnerships. So we're a really small group. We're implementing large programs. So the group that introduced ourselves, that's us. We're about 4 people generally implementing some pretty large programs in the city. And so we work closely with a lot of other groups ranging from Department of Neighborhoods, SDCI, Commute Seattle, to ensure that we can implement these programs. And part of the strategic planning work is to look at this as an opportunity to check in on those partnerships, see how they might grow, how they might be strengthened, how we're working together, how we can expand these programs in the interest of accomplishing larger city goals. So let's go to the next slide. Dive in on some data. So let's talk about how Seattle travels today. The latest info on traffic patterns, travel patterns in Seattle. We do an emphasis on leveraging data in our TDM programs. I'm a big believer in database decision making, performance management. We want to be able to track trends and understand our program impacts as best we can, as well as use data to identify opportunities. So our key program data that's informed our work over time has been focused on commutes. And many of our programs are focused on commutes. So you'll see that reflected here in this data. There are many different data sets we can look at for this, but our core source is the Commute Trip Reduction, or CTR, survey, which has been implemented over many years. It's every 2 years for well over a decade at this point. And this was most recently implemented as the Seattle Commute Survey via our partners at Commute Seattle and UW in fall 2022. And we can actually post the full report if you really want to dive into this. We'd be glad to share that out. It's on Commute Seattle's webpage. It's also been featured in the Seattle Times. So if this starts to look familiar, you may have seen it elsewhere. So this latest survey was the first comprehensive look at these patterns post-pandemic. And so it reveals some insights that some of them might be surprising, some of them might not be surprising. So first of all, this slide showing how people are now commuting by day. This slide showing the comparison year to year. There's obviously been quite a shift between 2019 and today, really underlining that trend of increasing telework. And this is something that prior to the pandemic was actually on the rise in Seattle. It was an option that we also promoted during some of the infrastructure and congestion challenges, like this during the Seattle squeeze when the viaduct was being shut down and removed in downtown Seattle. However, this data really underlines that we've really now seen that massive shift to hybrid and remote work. So from 6% of commute trips in 2019 to 46% in 2021 and 2022. At the same time, we also note that transit's trending up, but we essentially see a shift from many other modes to remote work. And it's worth noting again that this was collected in fall 2022. We know that this picture continues to change, and we continue to go through stages of return to office. So we may continue to see some major shifts in this mode split, but I think it's seen that hybrid work and remote work has continued impacts on commutes. Let's get to the next slide. So this survey was so fantastic in showing us also commute by mode split. Mode split by day. So underlining what many have observed, which is that we see a lot of folks who are working remotely Monday and Friday, and then seeing more trips to the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And that's a pattern that we've seen heighten during return to office, and something that we'll continue to monitor as we see that travel behavior is different depending on the day of the week. Let's go to the next slide. So those are the commute trips. We want to also talk about non-work trips. And, the commutes are just one type of trip. It's a very clear pattern, but there's a very different behavior that may happen for other travel purposes. So by some indications, driving trips even increased at some point of the pandemic as people did more home-based trips throughout the day. And then the majority of these trips are taken by driving and less by other options. And there's many reasons why that may be. It's a different destination, different options available. A different behavior to understand and support. But it's something that comes up frequently in our discussions about how to reduce emissions and how to support folks in getting around best, so that we're not so focused on only commutes, but that we need to also bear in mind that all of those workers have other needs to address throughout the day and throughout the week. So how might we support those non-driving trips for other purposes is a question that's come up. And finally, I'll just note that we know this is just one data source, and it's a great data source, but we do also like to ground our work in other sources that will be influencing the strategic plan, such as the PSRC Household Travel Survey, to add to the picture and make sure that we're understanding patterns in the most current and comprehensive way. Let's go to the next slide. So I'll touch on our engagement process, and Jenny will get into what this will look like moving forward. But we are undertaking this strategic plan as the rest of SDOT, as the city undertakes the Seattle Transportation Plan. And some of you may have been involved in that plan previously. It kicked off back in March 2022, and it's making good progress. It's still underway. And that plan has involved an extensive, comprehensive public engagement process. At last count, I know that they've collected over 76,000 data points in their phase 1 and phase 2 engagement phases. 7,000 people engaged. So we've seen a lot. It's been a very comprehensive effort. And so we as a group don't want to recreate that effort. We want to learn from it. And that's been our intent as we have put the groundwork together for this strategic plan. And we see our strategic plan as an implementation guide for what's coming out of STP or Seattle Transportation Plan. This is a larger governing plan that will help us that'll help define where TDM, where our programs need to go. And so our strategic plan will allow us to work on the specific actions we need to undertake to participate in the larger strategies of the Seattle Transportation Plan. So what we've heard so far, very broadly speaking, from the community engagement as part of STP, there's alignment around designing a transportation system for people rather than cars, and concern about achieving climate goals. So people want SDOT to focus on helping the people walk, roll, bike, take transit more, making those accessible and safe. Making sure that we have a focus on any existing gaps, especially in underserved communities. And there's a sense of kind of excitement and urgency. People want to see quick and transformational change in this regard. So as I mentioned, the Seattle Transportation Plan is still underway. We're planning our process to wrap up soon after that plan is complete. But right now, if you want to learn more about that, you can check out their webpage. I know that the latest phase 2 engagement report is there, so you can get more details on some of the points that I've just outlined. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, we've got a poll in the meantime. I'll hand it to Jenny.
All right, so we're going to do another word cloud, but this time we're going to ask you, what is the most frequent transportation question you hear from your organization or community you represent? So, whether as part of your role or, when you speak to your colleagues and your fellow buddies, what types of transportation questions are you hearing? Safety keeps getting bigger. Okay. Cost.
Seeing the safety
Schedule.
concerns pop up. Definitely hear that also.
Accessibility. Lots of different access. convenience. Frequency. Charging EV. Ooh, that one's new.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, there comes parking. I was waiting for parking, and I also see it. I see it represented in a couple of different phrases. So maybe that would be on there.
Great mobility. Construction. All right, seems like we're stable. Can a couple of folks volunteer to chime in on why they are, what exactly about these words are you hearing? So parking, what are people actually asking about or talking about? Anything around safety people want to talk about? Or cost?
You can put it in the chat too.
Yeah. And I think Sarah's already mentioned we are monitoring it. So if you have questions, you can definitely throw it in the chat as well. Okay, I think we are going to go back to our slides. And we're still with you, Sarah.
Great. Let's go to the next slide. So why a strategic plan for TDM? Why are we here? So as I mentioned earlier, this plan will help to guide how our team implements the relevant TDM strategies that come out of larger plans like the Seattle Transportation Plan, and how we respond to the strategies and needs we see coming out of related documents like the Seattle's Climate Change Response Framework, both of which are still underway, and we're working closely internally to align with those. But we know that we as a group want to be well prepared to support the needs coming out of those major efforts. One thing I wanted to mention was that folks who have been in the space for a little while may recall our previous plan. Our previous plan was our CTR strategic plan. It was very focused on the commute trip reduction program and looked at how we could leverage that program for larger goals and strategies. It was a very a strong plan that covered the years 2019 to 2023. So 2023 is the year we knew we would have to do a new plan, and it's aligned with some of these major efforts coming out of SDOT at the same time. So again, as a small group with a small budget, we have to prioritize our resources for the best impact. And we also want to make sure that our stakeholders, so that's all of you in the room, are represented in how we carry out those strategies and how we carry out that plan. So how can we be successful together is a major question that we're here asking today, and we'll be looking for input on that throughout the strategic planning process. So you may have read through the key reasons. So as I mentioned, aligning our TDM programs with those city level efforts. There's been a lot of interest in expanding TDM programming. So again, how do we focus on the non-commute trips? Looking at how to adapt in this new hybrid telecommuting environment, acknowledging that patterns have changed while at the same time there's plenty of folks who are not working from home, and how do we support them? Elevating equity. So the transportation equity framework at SDOT is our guiding document, and how we can address those historic inequities, address gaps that we see in neighborhoods that have been underinvested or underserved. And how do we develop new tools to support monitoring and measuring? So again, maintaining our strong emphasis on data and data-driven decision-making so that we can see what our impacts and opportunities are of our programs. And finally, supporting the implementation of transportation investments. Light rail continues to expand. We continue to see investment in transit around the region. We as a group want to be well poised to ensure that our stakeholders are aware of those options and leveraging those investments over the next many years. So, and then our final deliverable, the 5-year strategic plan for our programs. Let's go to the next slide. So this is a complicated chart. But what this is aiming to illustrate is the inputs and outputs of what we're talking about here today. The fact that we want to acknowledge we are just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to implementing strategies and transportation strategies that are going to work for the city. So this illustrates how we have the city comprehensive plan and these larger plan documents as, the umbrella. Those are the umbrella over our group and our plans. We also have a series of regulations in orange. These are our policies that are codified and that we will continue to use and respond to and leverage for best purpose. So again, those are some of the programs I touched on earlier. Throughout in the green bar, you'll see we want that continued input from you all. And then over towards the right, just illustration that these are the programs that are coming out of all of this that will be informed by this, and some of the major partners that we anticipate continuing to work with or building further relationships with. Let's go to the next slide. Hand it to Jenny.
Thank you. So now I will talk about the project, the timeline, and the work plan and deliverables. So we kicked off the project in March with a review of existing conditions. So as Sarah mentioned, there are lots of core policies and programs that the Transportation Option Team manages. So we wanted to review all that, review all the available data to make sure that we understood the baseline and where the city is right now. There are also lots of city initiatives that are happening, so we wanted to make sure we understood where the city's looking to head, the vision and goals for those programs, so that we can ensure that the strategic plan aligns with it and supports those goals, so that we can achieve the vision that the city has. The next step where we currently are at is defining goals. So looking at where we are, where we want to be, what are the goals that would help us get there. And so your input today will help feed into that as well. That's why we asked you the vision question, and this will then set the framework for developing the strategies and identifying the path forward for this team. So the next phase would be identifying the strategies. So once we've understood the goals, the challenges, the questions we want to face, we'll come up with the recommendations for strategies that the city could take for the next 5 years to help achieve those visions. And then once we have those finalized, we'll develop a strategic plan that will serve as the action plan for this group to put forth all of these programs and policies for the next 5 years. And as you'll see, the brown bar above, we hope to engage with stakeholders throughout the entire process to help shape and inform the program. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that would look like. Next slide, please. So when we were thinking about how we want to engage with you all, there were 3 main goals that we wanted to keep in mind. We really wanted to make sure that it was intentional, in terms of sensitive to the project, staff resources, and equity considerations. We want to make sure that when we're coming to you with, a question, or we want to are asking direct questions, or we're providing you with updates. So when we built the plan, it's ensuring that the timeline makes sense. We wanted to prevent redundancy with prior engagement efforts. So as Sarah mentioned, the city is in a process of updating its transportation plan and just wrapped up a very robust engagement effort. So we don't want to redo that. We want to learn from that. And then when we do come back to you, ask, again, very intentional questions to help inform this plan that maybe is a little more in-depth than what was asked previously. And then, you guys are all the folks on the ground who are implementing these services. So, we look to you to help provide some guidance or, input in terms of what are the key questions, the key challenges that you're facing to help tackle the key policies and programs that will come out of this strategic plan. Next slide, please. So what are the different engagement opportunities available for everyone? So the first one is an info session, which is what we're having today. So we're hoping to use this to introduce the project and to give everybody an overview of how you can be involved. As Sarah mentioned, we are recording the session so that folks can, who may have missed the session, could listen in afterwards and still feel like they have an opportunity to engage and be part of the process. We will also have several one-on-one interviews with certain key stakeholders to understand their perspectives, ask them about their experience based off of their role on how, they've experienced or interact with certain programs within SDOT to help inform how it can be improved or expanded. We'll also be convening an advisory group who would provide guidance and input throughout the process. So these folks would, would be key partners to help ensure that SDOT is able to successfully deliver and, develop a plan that really matches the city's ambitious goals and visions. And so those would be scheduled individually. We invite, as part of the RSVP link, we asked if anybody was interested in having an interview with us, and so we'll review that and we'll reach out to you if that's to schedule those interviews, and they'll happen next month. Afterwards, we will be having a focus group to present to folks our initial draft of strategies to get their input and take some suggestions on any revisions or amendments that should be made to help inform the final list of strategies that would go into the strategic plan. And that, again, we'll be reaching out to folks to schedule that sometime in August. And lastly, if you, maybe were not selected for any of these previous opportunities, or maybe you just don't have time, we'll also, ensure that SDOT provides regular updates and presentations to existing groups and forums so that you can stay involved, so you can join any of those. But we're also happy to hear your feedback and input throughout the process through email, through a phone call or anything like that. We have at the end provided there's contact information if you wish to do so. But yeah, we're really just open and would love to hear your input on this project. Next slide, please. Okay, another poll. All right, so select the top 3 outcomes you'd like to see come out of the TDM strategic plan. So we have listed several here, and you're only able to select 3, so choose carefully. The options are reducing local congestion, reducing emissions, reducing parking demand. Oh, and
I love a good pie chart. I'm glad we got this one in here.
yeah. It's like reducing local congestion, the top one. And then increasing access to transportation services and programs. Looks like reducing parking demand and reducing emissions, they're like neck and neck. Let's see which one pulls out ahead. Okay, I think we are. And if folks want to chime in, either verbally or on the chat about why you think these are your top 3 outcomes, and want to highlight it for the team, definitely feel free to do so. I'd love to hear your input. Okay, so it looks like reducing local congestion, one out. Close second is increasing access to transportation services and programs, and then reducing emissions, reducing parking demand, and then it's a tie between increasing drive-alone trips, or non-drive-alone trips, sorry, and activating local business districts and streets. Then the last two are tied between increasing awareness of transportation options and making transportation options more affordable. Does that sound true for most folks? All right. We will switch back. But again, if you want to follow up with anything in the chat, or you want to email us afterwards, definitely feel free to do so. I think that's very interesting, just to see where everybody's priorities are. Okay, so let's talk about next steps. Please. So as I previously mentioned, we wanted to kick off this engagement effort with this info session to give folks an overview of the project and the opportunities to provide their input. So then the next step would be we'll reach out to certain folks to schedule interviews and or focus groups. So, for those of you who expressed interest in the RSVP link to be interviewed, we'll look through it, we'll reach out. You can also suggest other stakeholders for engagement. So if you're looking at who attended that, maybe they weren't involved, but you think there's relevance to their role or position, please feel free to suggest them, and we'll reach out to them, engage with them, and include them in future communications. And then definitely, as I mentioned, provide feedback on our recommendations and our process every step of the way. I think you should have received this invitation from Sarah, so you have her email, but we'll also provide it at the very end. So then I will then switch to the next slide, please, which is Q&A. So as I mentioned, we left lots of time for everybody to ask their questions. We're happy to answer them. Again, you feel free to chat them, but we're opening the floor to folks. So anybody, feel free to unmute themselves and ask your question.
And some of you have been giving feedback as well. So if you want to jump in and anything that we've discussed, or if you've been involved in previous efforts or some of these other transportation initiatives that the city has been doing, and want to throw something in the hat for us to consider as we move forward with this TDM strategic plan, we'd love to hear that at this time too.
I see an interesting one from Tyler Blackwell. Sorry to call you out, but you mentioned parking and how many businesses are asking to formalize parking. Can you speak more about that?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so here in SOTO, our capacity for parking is incredibly high. Our parking capacity is at 130% of it. So that's extremely utilized beyond what actually exists. On top of that, we have a lot of the more systemic issues around Seattle and around our region all kind of converging in one place. Unhoused population, drug issues, a lot of crime. And as a result, parking has kind of become a tool to keep that at bay from businesses. And so when they ask to formalize parking, it allows PEOs to come over and ticket vehicles that people are living in, or it gives a push for parking enforcement to be around, and there are more eyes on a building or on a street. And so it's kind of become this tool, not how it's supposed to be designed necessarily, or how it's supposed to be used, but how it can be used to ensure that businesses are safe and that their employees and people patronizing those businesses are safe, or a little bit safer than what they would have been otherwise. It's kind of a unique usage of parking that I don't think is used in other parts of the city.
Yeah, that's a unique strategy that thank you for sharing. I think it's worth considering, you know, when we do think about these policies, but the different ways it could be used, the different you know, constituents it could impact. So that was really insightful and helpful. Thank you very much for sharing. Does anybody have questions about the process, how they could be involved, any of the policies and programs that Sarah walked everybody through? I know there was a lot, and I think for some of you, you know, you maybe interact with the city in one perspective.
There were a few comments in the chat about transit use and transit access and service. Some later ones here around biking infrastructure. You know, it'd be great to hear, you know, some of these unique cases are interesting too, because they might not be as apparent or in the news or whatnot. So if you've got unique experiences from your own constituency, you know, around access to transit or awareness of these modes, that'd be great for you to let us know your kind of unique circumstances and how you know, post-pandemic world or return to the office or those kinds of things are affecting yourself or your folks.
Okay, so if Sarah, did you want to say something?
I was going to say there's a couple of comments in the chat about infrastructure conditions for the purposes of the you know, the transportation options group. A key role that we see is when an investment is made in infrastructure, we want to make sure that local businesses and others know about that. It's, you know, we often will have a lot of communications when a project is starting up or when we're asking for input. We don't always have a lot of info or we see more opportunity to have more info about when an improvement has been made so that folks are aware, you know, there's a new option available, there's a new route available. So that's very much something that we'd be interested in talking about, you know, a process to really leverage that in this group moving forward.
Sarah, there's one question. There's one question in the chat.
Similarly about parking. You know, we don't we are adjacent to the curb space group, and we work with folks who are in the development review process, who deal closely with the parking issues associated with development, whether residential or commercial, again, we see them as our partners, although we wouldn't necessarily have you know, a direct role in, say, implementing RPC. But absolutely something we want to hear about. Again, regularly work with businesses who are encountering these issues. So this is not a road infrastructure plan, however, directly to the question in the chat. But again, want to make sure that we are aligning with groups that are working really closely in that area and communicating out the issues and opportunities that we see there. Love the idea about better lighting, trimming at bus stops, making sure that our facilities are in great shape and welcome folks to use transit. Great, thank you all for your comments and questions. I hope we can keep this discussion going. We will be providing my info at the end of the presentation again, but again, you should all have received my email address. Absolutely open to comments, questions, and welcome your input moving forward.
Do you want to move to the next slide so that we can show Sarah's contact information? There you go. Okay, I think we got lots of questions, comments in the chat, so we'll go through them at after this session. But thank you all so much for your time. I think this is just the beginning of our effort. We really appreciate your time today, and we hope to continue to engage with you, to hear from you throughout this process. So please don't be a stranger. Email, call us if you have anything you wanted to share.
Thanks, Jenny and team. And I just wanted to again say thank you so much for everybody who attended. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day. We hope that you'll stay engaged and that we'll keep hearing from you. So we really appreciate it. All right, take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Good day.